Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus pilot, and in today's video let's talk about the pack flow selector that you find in the cockpit of pretty much all Airbus aircraft. Now, what is this good for and why do we use it? Well, let's start with the basic function of the selector. So, the pack flow determines how much air actually flows through the air conditioning packs. Now, you got three options in here on the A319 and A320, also on the A330, but that's gonna be for the end of the video. And in the A321, you will notice that you only have an ECON flow selector that you can only turn on or off. So, why would you want to vary the rate at which air flows through the packs? Of course, with less air required, you need to take less air from your engine bleed, and therefore more air is available for combustion, and therefore more thrust can be created. In turn, as you need the same amount of thrust, you can reduce the amount of thrust required and therefore the fuel used, and this reduces fuel flow with lower pack flows selected. Now, of course, you can't just go ahead and blindly select the low position, but the amount of air required is determined by the amount of passengers on board the aircraft. Now, every airline is going to draw up their own policies for when the pack flow selector is going to be turned into the low position. For example, in my airline, we have some fixed values of 140 or less passengers on the A320 family and 60% of the economy class being full on the A330. And in my airline, we are going to get a note on the load sheet when the amount of passengers on board is small enough that the pack flow selector should be set to the low position. On the A321 though, you've got a slightly different system. On the A321, you have an ECON flow button which you can turn on or off. Now, the ECON flow button, when it is turned on, is automatically going to vary the amount of flow provided between low and norm so that the demand can be fulfilled as calculated by the computer. Now, on the A330, you actually have an optional system where on the init page you can enter the amount of passengers on board in here, and then the pack flow is going to be calculated automatically depending on the amount of passengers entered in there. Very easy to forget to enter that, by the way, since you can only enter it once the load sheet has been received, unless you want to enter some artificial number in the pre-flight procedure. Now, there is one problem associated with this entire system, and that is if pack flow is selected to low, and for whatever reason this does not meet the demand required, then you might get the condition page pop up on your ECAM, and it is going to tell you that the aircraft is unable to keep up the pressurization. In that case, the system does not tell you at that point, but in that case, turn the pack flow selector back into the norm position. Finally, you will notice that there is also a high position available on here in the A319 and A320 as well as the A330, which does not exist on the A321. Now, the background of this position is that a high pack flow might be needed in case you've got especially hot or humid conditions where normal airflow is not sufficient to cool the cabin sufficiently. This can be the case, for example, in the Caribbean, where you've got very high levels of moisture in the air combined with very high temperatures and often even clear skies and the sun shining right onto the fuselage of the aircraft. The sun shining onto the fuselage really is one point here that shouldn't be underestimated, as it provides an immense amount of heating to your plane. So when all of these factors come together, the pack flow might be selected into the high position, even though during normal operations this is mostly not the case. Now, last but not least, the packs will also regulate to high flow automatically without the pilots commanding it if either the APU bleed supplies the air conditioning, or if one engine bleed fails or is turned off by the pilots. And that basically is everything you need to know about the pack flow selector. Now last but not least, I want to give you a little insight into some numbers used by other airlines for the pack flow, since basically, as I told you, all airlines start to develop their own procedures here. And giving you some examples here, there is one airline that is going to use pack flow low on the A320 with passengers up to 115, and pack flow ECON with up to 140 passengers on the Airbus A321. Now, this saves approximately 0.5% of the trip fuel, but living in a time where we are paying about $1,800 per ton of fuel now, this can make up quite a difference. Another airline, for example, uses pack flow low for up to 85 passengers in the A319 and A320, while they use also 140 for pack flow ECON on the A321. Another airline, to give you one last example, uses low in case of less than 115 passengers, but pack flow ECON once again for 140 passengers on the A321. Now, this last airline uses a layout of 180 passengers maximum in the A320, so we're talking about 63% of payload here, and 220 passengers in the A321, so again 63%. So I do hope that this gives you a little bit of an insight. I would personally really appreciate if Phoenix could add that note to advise pack flow low towards the load sheet when it is received, as my airline does it in the real world. But nonetheless, this shall be all for today's video, so thank you very much for watching. I hope that you learned something today. Leave your feedback in the comments below, and if you're a real-world airline pilot, I would appreciate to hear what the numbers in your airline are. Thank you very much for watching. I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one. In the meantime, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as it does really help out the channel. And if you really love what I'm doing, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you for watching, and see you all again on the next one.